what runner is in your mind's eye. Doesn't have to be anything
Like during a run.
whatever you think about a runner looking like, that's what you're gonna draw.
This is what you think a runner looks like.
And so you will do this with your patients.
Nikki, you come up here and do it too.
All right,
That's what I get.
you want to try it, Nick?
Sure.
Tiny little legs. It's a bobble. So we'll get to this.
You got someone falling, someone like cheerleading, and someone like fast walking.
One of the sort of foundational concepts behind pose, and the reason the guy who developed pose, Dr. Romanoff, developed pose is because he felt as if in America there is no culture of running. What he means by that is not that we don't have interest in running, not that we aren't good runners, but in general, we have no baseline about formal education and teaching people to run. It is viewed as an inherent skill that everybody does and has, and that we don't need to do anything interventionally to teach people how to do that. Whereas if you look across the board in other cultures and societies, running and education surrounding running is a foundational part of physical education in schools. There's huge cultures of running, obviously, in Africa and the Caribbean, and Jamaica. Like these places, these people, running is a huge part of their culture. It's a huge thing that these people do. Our culture of running here is largely shaped by corporations, companies that want to sell you a shoe. So the way that we view and understand running is often driven by what people tell us that it is because they want to sell us something, right? So you go into any running store or any Nike, right? They have these silhouette mannequins, you're doing these things all with the purpose of trying to sell you a shoe, which is not necessarily the best thing when we're trying to actually teach people how to run. And this is why the average runner, the average American runner, incurs 83% of Americans will get injured every single year running, right? And this is largely due to certain running inefficiencies because we've never been taught to run. We have shoes that we believe will make us better runners, but the shoes don't do anything for us aside from actually hiding most of our inefficiencies. So 83% of runners get injured annually. 85% of runners are overstriders and heel striders. So we know that the way that we run is very directly correlated to the amount of injuries that we get. We have a tremendous amount of runners, which also means a tremendous amount of people are getting injured every year. And so what Pose method aims to do is to create a common language and a common understanding behind how we view running education and how we are able to communicate in a simple and effective way to teach people how to move. More often than not, we learn this by observation. We learn this like anything, right? We see a movement, we apply it in our mind. We see a silhouette of a Nike runner overstriding, right? Often the Nike runner looks like this. Leg way out in front of you, and here, these fancy shoes on, right? This is what we see. So we automatically think, okay, this is what a runner should look like. But because we've never had any formal education behind what is a run, right? What are the physics and movements that drive us to move forward? And so what we'll do today is we're gonna go through what are like the three phases of a run. And basically, the most simple way to teach people how to run. And Poe's method asserts that there really are only, there's one baseline position and then one, so remember your runners? And there's only one baseline position and there's two phases on either side of that baseline position. This is a runner. Every single runner across the board will go through this motion. It doesn't matter if you're a 400-pound obese person who's learning to run for the first time, or you say, well, every single person passes through this, which is pose. And so what they did is they analyzed runners, they videotaped everything and said, what's the one common denominator? And the common denominator is every single person who passes through this position, this pose position. And so this is our framework for everything. Everything that happens after this and before this is going to either determine our efficiency or inefficiency. How well can we return back to this position? So in order to evaluate something, much like we evaluate like a deadlift, we teach people how to set up first, right? And then we teach them how to get from their setup position to now the finish of that lift, right? And so basically we're looking at what happens in between those positions to determine how efficient we are. So we use what are called frame counts in order to do that, which we'll get to in a minute. Any questions about that before we get going? So if we understand this to be pose, our propulsion force to be fall, all we're doing from our fall is picking our foot up, pulling our foot up to get back to pose. So what you'll never hear us say is that we're pushing off the ground. And the reason that's important is because most people believe that we have to use our muscles to propel us forward. And what they really find is that the primary driver behind a forward propulsion obviously is falling and using our muscles as body weight to fall. So everybody stand up and buddy up real quick. So what you're gonna do with your buddy is you're gonna hold up your hand. So Lauren and Andrew, hold up your hand. And you're gonna have Nick, you're gonna try to push Lauren, so actually push into her hand. You're gonna push into his hand with your hand, So both with your hands. So take your hand, try to push Lauren away, right? You try to push him away, right? So what's the first thing you did in order to push them away? You use your body weight, right? So now if Lauren takes your body weight away from you, or actually rather, why don't you try the opposite, Andrew? So you stretch, right? So you use your body weight to get into it. Now do the opposite. So I'm going to take Jesse's body weight away from him, try to push him, right? You have no capacity to do that. So try that real quick.
So the first thing that like you immediately want to do is like you kick. I want to kick my feet back. My
What are we doing? We're just staying here.
So you're going to take his body weight away. So one hand here, right? Right. So now he has no ability to move forward, right? And so by stripping away one's ability to fall, we completely render their forward movement useless, right? And so this is a helpful tool with your patients to show them like, oh, that actually is how we create movement, right? So the only utility of having body weight in a run is to create inertia forward, just via gravity, which also means that that's free energy, right? To get into a run should take very little effort because all we're using is the natural laws of gravity. So running should feel easy, right? If we position ourselves well enough, running should feel almost effortless. It's kind of like when you're going down a hill in the car, you take your foot off the gas, you take your foot off the brake, the car's gonna go, right? So what we have to do is position people from this position here into a proper fall so that they can just create free energy, right? The more the fall angle, I mean, if you did the actual pose course, they break it down into every degree, right? Right around 15 degrees of fall angle, you will start to experience extreme acceleration, right? If you look at Usain Bolt, his fall angle is around 20, 21 degrees, right? And so obviously the more you fall, the faster the run will be. So that is the only thing governing our speed. So if you go on a jog, what are those joggers like, right? The upright. If you're sprinting, right, you're fully leaning into it. And so we'll get into drills that will help us kind of feel what that should feel like. Now the fall is only worthwhile if the holding phase is efficient. So a really good fall with a late pull is still going to render an overstride and basically a braking mechanism, right? So if I start my falling process and I'm pulling my foot off the ground really late, what I'm going to naturally do is I'm going to pendulum my leg through in order to get to the ground because I'm really late coming off the ground. So I have to quickly get the leg through. And so what I'm normally going to do, as opposed to pulling here, I'm going to kick here and end up in front of you. And so that any type of movement in front of me, right? If I went straight down my body and I'm out in front of me, that is a vector working against me, right? So with that movement, right, that is force working against my body, which also means now my body has to then catch up to that leg in front of me in order to continue my fall, right? So the pull is what's going to help determine how efficiently we get back to pose and where we land underneath or in relation to midline, right? So if I'm pulling on time and I pull my heel up here, I'm going to land underneath me so I can continue to fall. So all running is a series of is a continuous forward fall with picking your foot up off the ground. That is going when you, and we know this to be true, is because when he proposed this as a concept to this like world form of runners, they kind of called it a heretic, because forever what was taught was pushing off the ground, using your body weight. The stronger your legs are, the better you are. Look at like the fastest marathon runners. What's the guy's name who ran the sub 2? Yeah, he's 5'6". He's not a big guy, right? Usain Bolt, I mean, he's 6'5", but he's only 200 pounds, right? 6'5", 200 pounds. He's skinny, right? So there's not a lot of muscle on these people, right? What they do better than anyone is they utilize laws of gravity. And so they basically said to him, they said, if you can run on ice, we'll believe what you're saying is true. So he went out and he ran on ice and he videotaped it and sent it in. And think about running on ice. You have no ground force, right? You can't propel yourself off the ground. All he did was lean and pick his foot up off the ground. And he ran fast on ice. And so that is what the main thing that was got people think about, like, oh, maybe there is a more efficient way to kind of allow us to run. So when we're talking about efficiency, the way that we're going to evaluate people is using what's called a frame count, which is effectively getting, how many frames does it take us, frames on the camera, shooting it, I think we have like 30 frames per second. How many frames does it take us to get to here, right? And so it should take 1 frame, right? Similarly, how many from here to here should take 1 frame. So ideal frame count is a 1-to-1 ratio. Basically 1 frame to get to falling, 1 frame to get back to pose, or really to get your foot off the ground. So this is the simplest and most easy way that we can evaluate people and know where we're lacking. I've seen probably more often than not, people are decent getting into the fall, but are late getting into their pull phase. So they're going to be like a 2-1, right? And so what we know is that if we see an overstride on someone and they take 2 frames to get from pull to pose, we know that they're a late puller, so we have to work on the pulling, right? So it's taking the complication out of the running assessment and saying, okay, well this leg is working behind, so what do we do with that, right?
Like saying only achieve this much angle, flexion.
Yeah, it's like it's taking all the complication out of it and making it super digestible to say, okay, we know your frame count's slow, we just have to get you falling better, we have to get you pulling better, right? Because everybody's gonna be here. We don't even really need to teach pose. We need to teach pose as a concept. We need to teach pose as the same way we would teach a deadlift setup or, any type of exercise initial point, get people familiar with that as their baseline. All we have to teach them is how to fall and how to pull. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Am I missing any major
No.
concepts here?
No, and in the pull part, a lot of times with people with like persistent Achilles tendonitis or plantar fasciitis, they're pushing off the ground
Mhm.
rather than pulling with the hamstring,
Yeah.
right? So they're trying to get the propulsion, and so once you teach them to like lift off the ground faster and use your hamstrings, which is much stronger, they're going to be able to resolve a lot of
So
the issues.
this would be the form that we actually use to evaluate people. So you'll actually give them this form. So at the top it'll say what's their primary issues, and you can kind of correlate some of these things to what you see on this frame count assessment. So you'll go through it and basically you'll check off, where's their initial contact, right? How many frames does it take to get to pose? How many frames to get to pull? Do they have a proper fall execution? Do they have a proper pull execution? It dumbs it down big time. And based off of that, you can look at sort of what's the lowest hanging fruit. And that's what you're going to end up prescribing to people. So, it takes, again, all the complication out of doing a video analysis for someone and trying to change things like, oh my gosh, you're an overpronator. More likely, they're an early excessive pronator because they're overstriding and they can't manage their body. Anytime we overstride, we're looking at 2 to 6 times their body weight, right? I don't know about you, but I can't squat 600 or 6 times my body weight, right? So that's the reason people are getting these misuse injuries. And so it's more about how do we help them manage ground reaction forces? That's the basis behind all of running is reducing the forces that somebody may incur on the run by allowing them to just continuously fall. The other things that we can talk about that play into this is cadence. I think all of us know that 180 beats per minute is ideal. Beats per minute is ideal. Yes, that's per minute. Beats per minute, same thing. Is an ideal cadence for one person. Somebody who's at 160, we should automatically take them to 180, right? We want to increase them by about 2 to 5% with time. This is the minimum though, right? Everybody should be here. The reason that's so important is that's going to pretty much drastically reduce stride length, right? I always use the analogy with my patients. You take a clone of yourself and you race yourself in a mile. You start exactly at the same time. You finish at exactly the same time. Your cadence was 160, your cadence was 180. The only difference is the number of steps, which means that the length of the steps, right? And so the 180 is obviously going to be the most efficient. Usain Bolt is running around 240, right? But this should be the middle. That is one of the easiest things to manipulate to get people to do this stuff better, right? So there's other kind of little tricks that we will use in order to teach people, okay, we know your fall and your pull execution is delayed, but that's because you're overstriding and you're running at a cadence of 150. So let's just get you running at a higher cadence. Everybody's always going to ask if cadence and speed are dependent on one or not, right? You can try this on the treadmill, have yourself run at 180 beats per minute at 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 miles per hour. The cadence never stops, but the speed is ever increasing. So what I would like us to do is I want to look at each of your individual frame counts from the run that we just did. I'll tell you kind of how we're assessing that, what we're looking for to get to those frame counts. And then from there, you'll actually grade yourself on there. And then we're going to go over the drills. So, I would say it's worth telling people that there is no ideal runner, there is no ideal way to run. You take the fastest 100 women, fastest 100 men in the world, they all have different anatomy, different neural systems, different baggage, all of those things, experiences that play into the way that they decide to move. But there are certain things those fastest people all do the same, and they're the invariable elements, right? The elements of pose, fall, and pull are exactly the same. Now, their anatomy is going to be different. The Q angle is going to be different. The pelvic drop may be different, right? Those things are going to change in order to run. But these invariable elements do not change and should not change. So we know that we can confidently teach people into these concepts, knowing that it's only gonna make them more efficient. It's going to bring them more closely to a proper runner and reduce their prevalence of injury. We have people say things to us like, well, you know, the research says the more that we tinker with people's running, the more injuries they're gonna get. And my response to that is, okay, as a physical therapist, if you see somebody squatting incorrectly, would you not correct their squat, right? If we're gonna get load on people, that's pretty asinine to not believe that we should not have a more proper way to do something. Where people get in trouble with tinkering with running is things like putting the negative thoughts and associations around that person's mouth. Oh my gosh, you have the flattest feet in the world, right? Your knees are wonky, right? Like those things are damaging, and the people will perseverate on those things. There's an efficient way to swim, there's an efficient way to throw, right? Every single sport has these things except for running, right? And so what was her name? Carrie, yeah, Carrie was the one who was kind of challenging this. Like, no, it's just using language to get people to do what is right for them, right? We're not trying to drastically change it. We're trying to allow them to use the natural laws of gravity so that they can move the way that they are built to do. If you look at every Kenyan runner who owns a world record, they all do this just innately, right?
Well, people challenge us because we're putting new terminology and like, oh, you're making it more complicated. And it's really just looking at the frame count and seeing through, you know, what is your fall, what's your pull, and then helping them, you know, with their cadence.
That's not even telling people like, oh, your toe is up too much, or oh,
Yeah,
your hip drop. It's like, it's not telling people that. That would be,
Yeah.
The filming isn't even from behind, like you're just doing
Yeah.
a lateral view of them running and you're counting it.
Now, certainly if you're an Olympian athlete and you've got some posterior too,
Mhm.
you know, you probably want to get some like high def motion analysis, looking at force plates and things like that. For the average runner, like, they need to know how to pick their feet up, you know? So let's go, where did I put that? Projector. Yeah, let me, so when we're looking at,
Why don't you prepare, Nick can come over here.
so we're looking at frame counts. The way we're gonna do this is, make sure, so what you can do if you film on your phone, you can go into the camera app and make sure, so we're shooting at 30 frames per second, so you can change that. If it's at 60 frames per second, then the ideal is gonna be 2 to 2, instead of 1 to 1. So we go back to here, let's go back to, this is the tricky part, it's like scrolling through. So the first thing I'm gonna do is look at initial contact. Okay, so here's his initial contact right about there, okay? So that's our 0 point. So I'm now looking from his pull phase to get to pose. So that's 0, 1, 2, so that's 1, 2. So he's at pose in 2. And does everybody see that? That's 0, 1, 2, pose in 2. The reason we know that, as soon as the heel starts coming off the ground, as soon as his body starts advancing over his tibia, he's now in fall. So he's at fall, that's his 0. So you don't stop the 0 at his pose, that would not be his 0. The 0 would be the next frame where the fall starts to happen. So that's 0, 1, 2, he's 3, right? So you are a 2, 3 on your, so if you go initial contact, let's actually look at your initial contact, where you're kind of striking. Kind of flat-footed. So you're more active / ahead. So you're definitely not underneath your body. Okay, so then your frame count to pose was 2 to get to pose. Then your frame count to pull was 3. Okay. And then when we look at your fall execution, we want to see, we're really looking at the hips. You can see that your fall execution, you actually are kind of slightly bent at the hips. So you have a little bit of waist bend in your fall execution. And then when we're looking at, you have an attempted push off, where you can see you're trying to actually push yourself off the ground. So you can see yourself starting to pull, the pulling is happening right there, right? And so the reason your biggest issue would be you're falling, right? So you're a 3 count on your fall. And so that means we know you're late pulling, right? Because you have an attempted push off. So you're pulling later than you ought to be. So your primary issue would be late pull, which is causing you to land a little bit ahead of your body. And so if we actually got you pulling faster, then it would probably clean up both your fall and your
You wanna look at it on his way back? Let's see.
So let's see if we look at sprinting, everybody gets a little bit better at sprinting because now we're falling faster. And so let's see. So there's your initial, right? Because if you're not quite, you can see a little bit of deformation there, so that's your initial. So that's your 0, 1. So you're like 1.5, right? Because you're almost even falling. Right, so then there's your 0, 1, 2, but you're off the ground. So you're like a 1.5 to 2. Yeah. But you can see.
You still see the post pull is still a little bit longer than the.
Yeah.
Post.
Yeah. But you can see, I mean, look at that leg, because you're trying to push off the ground, right? Your leg is so far behind you that you really don't start your pulling until like right there, right? That's when you start pulling, right? But then once you hit the ground, right, like that heel is in a great position, right? That's a really nice falling. We maybe would like to see those hips be pressed out a little bit further. But the primary thing we should work on with you is, can we just get you pulling the heel off the ground, right? Not thinking about pushing it off, just get the heel off, right? Okay, so let's see Jesse now. Let's look at Jesse. He was kind of hot dogging it a little bit.
He was just so much strong.
You said 10K pace, I run a slow 10K.
Okay, so we see initial contact there. So that's our 0, 1, 2, 3. We're kind of like 2.5 to 3.
Yeah.
You can see that heel start to come up. So let's just call it 3 for efficiency's sake. So that's our 0. Sorry, that was our 3. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're like 3.5. Yeah. So you're like a 3, 3.5. But so if you go through everything there,
Almost a great ratio.
let's look at where your foot is landing.
So where does this go on the form?
So let's look at the initial contact.
So where you're.
So you can see where the little check mark is.
Yeah.
So you would,
So you
you're,
would check. So you're going to be, if we look at your landing,
That's like knee locked.
I would kind of say active / ahead. You're
Okay.
definitely not like overstriding,
Mhm.
right? You look a little bit more like that second picture.
Okay,
Your knee is not totally locked.
yeah,
Okay, so then your frame count pose was 3.
like 3.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your fall execution or your frame count to pull was like 3+.
Mhm.
Right? Your fall execution, you actually have a decent fall,
Mhm.
right? Like you're leaning with your hips, your chest is up, leading the way. Like your fall is actually pretty good.
Mhm.
So I would actually say your fall execution is
Body of.
fairly body aligned, right?
yeah, you're good, yes.
Yeah. Your pull execution, you have a bit of a late of an attempted push off,
Yeah,
right? We know that because the frame count's pulled.
yeah, and because like that leg is like trailing behind.
Yeah.
So I guess like, would you say that like, do you typically look at like, I know this isn't the point of the pose, but like looking at like that hip extension is where you kind of see that.
Yeah. So that's where you then, obviously can do a Thomas test or we look at passive hip extension, see can they even do it.
Right, okay.
All right, so then if we look at your sprint actually looked pretty good. That's like
Yeah.
it's just like
Look at
Speedy
that.
Gonzalez.
Woo, that
So that's
was good image. Look at that, that's what he does, he does.
But
like-
look, okay, so now because you sprinted, right,
Mhm.
your initial contact, you
Yeah.
are
That's-
underneath your body,
Yeah, that's
right?
pretty good.
That's your 0. So 0, 1, yeah, so you were 1,
Mhm.
and then to get off the ground, so that's your 0, 1, 2, you're kind of off the
Yeah.
ground, there, right, so now 2.
Okay.
That's a nice looking run though. I mean,
Yeah,
look-
no, I was amazed,
look
you
at
said
where
you
that-
can't run.
Yeah, look at where that.
I can't run distances.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
if you
you're-
had me
you're
run
right.
to Kroger or to Walgreens, I'd be dying.
Look at where that foot's landing, right? 4-foot contact, look on that form, right?
Yeah.
4-foot contact with that heel up, but you can see you're still a little delayed with that pull,
With that,
right?
yeah.
Like, as your foot is hitting the ground, that heel should almost be near your butt,
Okay.
right? And so that's what's gonna get you to pose faster.
Mhm.
So does that help kind of going through that?
Yeah, that kind of makes sense.
Just, I think it makes it a lot more objective. You have clear markers that you're looking for.
Mhm.
So just to kind of review, it's starting at initial contact. Initial contact's your 0 point.
Mhm.
Then you're counting how many frames to get to pose. You advance 1 frame from your pose position, and that's your 0. And then how many frames to get to fall, which is the moment your foot comes off the ground. So we're not looking at, I think we had this question when we were there, is it would be, so like as his foot is coming off the ground, so that would be the last frame that you count.
Mhm.
You're not going there and saying, oh, that's the additional
Both
frame,
feet,
right?
right.
As soon as that next frame happens, he's already well off the ground, so it's the frame before the
Yeah. Can you say that series again? So like you see your initial contact,
So
then you
it's-
go,
initial contact is
Mhm.
0
then how many frames to
to pose,
pose?
Yep.
Okay.
then it's advance 1 frame from pose, that's your 0. So it's basically as soon as that fall starts to happen,
Yeah.
that's your 0.
And that's when like heel comes up.
Yeah, as soon as that
Okay.
heel starts coming off the ground effectively, that's your 0.
Okay.
And then as soon as the last frame where the foot is touching the ground, that's the last one you count.
Okay.
So now we know what the issues are.
It has it on here too, where it says, okay, very good. It should take 1 frame to get from initial contact into the running post and then get from the running post to the pool, like right here.
Oh, gotcha,
I
gotcha,
guess
gotcha.
you're
Okay.
kind of like, oh,
But
remember, like, initial contact, yeah, could be your front, your forefoot, your heel,
yeah,
laying flat, like, it
Yeah,
doesn't have
just
to be.
depending on the line.
wherever you start to see deformation.
So is that something too, 7 more frames it takes, since that's like per second, we're looking for like steps per minute kind of thing. So if it takes like 3, that means that they're likely very slow on the steps per minute. However, it's probably
Yeah.
like
But that's where you would just,
probably
yeah,
more. I mean,
Phil,
it's
yeah,
just-
truly,
So they could have a good ratio.
Yeah.
And we might not necessarily need to pull, like change the pull and fall, but if they're at 3 and 3, then it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if we just increase your beats per minute, you're probably.
Probably, That normally is the first place I think I start, is like, okay, let's get your cadence up.
And see,
Make sure
see
you're-
how that
You know how
changes.
it changes.
Okay.
But again, that's part, we're gonna do some gradation drills and show you. A
Mhm.
lot of people really struggle with that
Mhm.
to the cadence.
Yep. So let's go through sort of like, we'll go through all the list of drills down here at the bottom. And then we'll go through like specific drills for both falling and pulling. So the first drill, and this is where we'll want to spread out, I'm gonna move this so that.
But one
Okay,
thing,
good.
the thing with Hendrick was like, he was saying, how like you're kind of flexed at your hips. A lot of runners run like this. They're never actually getting their hips forward, like
Right.
they land almost like in a bit of.
I guess more of like leaning.
If you lean ankle, if you lean, your hips are still open, right? And so then you're falling and pulling off. And I spent a ton of time working on, like, getting comfortable with almost letting my hips, even when I'm standing, because I notice sometimes even standing, I'll kind of just let myself
Yeah.
hang out here with a slight flex in my, so I'm like, all right, like, let me get myself, turn my glutes on. Jesse just works with me so much, that they're like always on, they just push my bar.
A good image to tell people is, in order to have a proper fall execution, is imagine you've got like a ski rope tied at your waist, and you got a boat pulling you from your waist, right? If you have that imaginary rope at your waist, right, that's gonna be the thing that's driving you forward, right? And so getting the image to be, because here's what happens when you tell people to fall. Right, they bend the waist, as opposed to pushing with the hips. So you're really letting the hips be the driver, the chest is connected to the hips, right? So the hips are gonna be the thing that actually is determining the fall, right? All right, so let's go through our first series of drills. So the first thing we're gonna do is actually just work on getting to a proper pose position. So I want everybody to find pose. Pose should be the stance leg knee is slightly unlocked. The other leg heel is up, toes are in an active position. Everybody always wants to point their toes, hold the toes up. This is gonna be one of the more important things, getting the dorsiflexors engaged. Right? So getting the dorsiflexors engaged is going to help eliminate a push off, right? Because if I'm pushing, my toes are pointed. If I'm pulling, I'm in dorsiflexion, right? So our primary position, knee slightly bent, heel stays connected to the ground, pull the heel up towards the body. This is pose, right? That's our pose position. So what we're gonna do from there, foot back down on the ground, pull right back to pose. Down, pull up, right? So you wanna think about, you're pulling your heel straight up towards your body. A lot of times, how many of you have heard track coaches say, man, that person's got a great kick, right? They've got a really good kick. What is a kick? What does that make us think of? Right?
Yeah.
Hamstring, right? Pulling back with the heel to the hamstring. What they should really be saying is, they've got an amazing pull, right? So sometimes we're trying to say, we're all saying the same thing but differently, but sometimes the way that we say it is gonna give people the wrong interpretation.
Yeah.
A lot of times I'll tell people, get your heel off the ground, get your heel to your body. So what do? Right? A soccer ball, I want to pull, right? Pull the heel.
And it's
straight
not
up.
sometimes we'll put your hand in, just bring your heel to your
Yeah.
knee.
Can you pull your heel?
Heel to your
Let
knee.
your arm hang, can you pull that heel straight? It's like an elevator, right? That's what we want to do. We don't
And the
want-
reverse of that is a lot of people say, look at that knee drive, and knee drive immediately, people are gonna come forward
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
overstride,
Here.
you
They
know?
say drive your knee. What they really should be saying is hold the heel, right? This is another good test to do with people. I want you to go into 90-90. And when you do that, what muscle group on this leg do you feel work? CPTs, you're good at this, right? Where you feel, and you should feel,
Yeah.
right, the hip flexor. Do the exact opposite, 90-90 back here. Hamstring, right? We should never be that lit up in our hamstring. Go into a pose position. Where do you feel it?
Balance.
Right, just balance,
Yeah.
right? So this is where people are gonna get hamstring issues, right? This is where people are gonna get hip flexor issues.
Yeah.
So we know that this pose position is ideal because there's nothing on the body, right? We're just aligned. We're an accordion, right? This is our position where we can actually absorb the weight from the ground, right? So pull to pose, get comfortable with that, right? Your next progression is gonna be an alternating pull to pose. Here, rounded switch. Alternating is if you love. That should be our run. If we just added in a lean, that would work. Okay? So pull to pose, alternating, or rapid alternating pull to pose. Okay? What else do we have this? We did pull to pose.
Shape is forward.
Oh, let's do body weight perception. Get in our pose position. Using just an ankle strategy. Lean it back, right? Lean it forward, start to feel that fall positioning. You might have to catch yourself, right? That's how we're gonna teach people proper position on pose and then proper progression into the fall. Just have people play around with it from a perception standpoint. Lean, right? You're gonna feel gravity working against you. There's people who are like real upright runners, right? Some say you're not too good, right? Right, and now have them lean forward, right, get on the toes, forward movement, get lateral, medial lateral, the foot.
Yeah,
Since that's what-
This is the changes.
We're gonna save the TikToks, the twists, all that stuff, yeah. Okay, so let's do,
You wanna practice?
let's do
Go
the-
to the cadence.
yeah, like a pull.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like those drills to the 180. Let's come down here because we can do it down here. So once they get used to that, then you're gonna do it to the metronome. And we tell everybody you can get like, the free metronome.
We said 3 o'clock, right?
Mhm.
So 180.
Like for what, 3 steps a second, I guess? We should be aiming for, so.
So this is how I, it's, you start from here. So they're going into pose, right? You're pulling the knee up. Side of the other. Make sure your hips are forward, don't be sitting back, right? Now you're gonna switch. You gotta work. And you want to put your hands down to the side to try to drive.
Notice dorsal flexion, and heel straight up.
So now you're gonna work on doing it on one leg.
Yeah.
This is where it gets really tricky. So we're gonna start by hopping, because it's really hard to not be hopping. So hop to the beat, and we'll lift with our right foot. So pull, 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 pull. Yeah, waist like a stopping. I'll notice that it's really hard to be, to stay to the beat. Just, all right, so the next part is you hop, you pull, and you start moving. And then we're gonna lean, and then you're gonna just stop. Lean, and then jump. Your left leg is so rigid. You got like a peg leg there. There you go. It's hard.
Yeah, going into the
There you go. Try on the leg you didn't go on. You'll notice on one leg.
I forget which leg I didn't sit on.
Once you get it, it pulls your knee a little bit more. Andrew, you're doing a little bit of a butt kick.
Yeah. Hold on.
Yeah, the left side, it's like, you're like the left side can't, it doesn't help.
There you go, Nick.
That's a coordinated guys in here.
You're not really doing it.
Flexion, right? You go just pull. Right.
So this is the drill I do before I
There
run,
you go.
to start to wake up my legs and be like, all right, I need to feel what that beat is and what that, yep. Yeah, oh, you can do the pony, yep. You go fast. Let me go. That way.
So that's really just getting on, alternating your feet.
Yeah, you're doing the shuffle. It's like keeping your, it's almost like a cheerleader,
Yeah.
like you're gonna do a cheer. So try to go faster. It's a lot of calf, right? Like getting that calf to pull off the ground.
So those are, yeah, I mean, and you can do that even just like a pull to post, trying to work that a metronome. You would probably go by half, it's only one side. You slow that down to this 90. Okay, that should be your right side cadence. So using metronome, using auditory feedback, because most of us, like if you saw the, we did the workshop, or warm up with the running group, I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
I mean, those runners are so uncoordinated. The more you can give them like an external auditory cue will help them kind of at least like find the rhythm. Because most of us have rhythm, we just don't know we have it. Alright, so we did, yeah, let's look at falling. So find a piece of
Find the
wall.
wall. Here, we can, the door, I can shut this, yeah, the bathroom.
Find a piece of wall. You're gonna get about a foot to a foot and a half away from the wall. Both feet are flat, heels stay down the whole time. Slight bend in the knees. From there, lean with the hips, fall into the wall, push yourself back. So using the hips, always keeping the heels down. Right, because our body should advance, our tibia should advance over our foot, basically into dorsiflexion with a flat foot on the ground. Oftentimes, if somebody who has an early heel up, they have a tight Achilles, right? That's where you're gonna start to overload the Achilles, so the foot should really be flat.
Yeah, this is a good exercise for mobility. You single up fall, right?
Yeah,
So you go into pose on one leg. And
so yeah, get into your pose position again, slightly unlocked at the knee. Use the hips, hips should always be the driver.
And I will tell you, I give this now to all my little ladies for balance.
Yes, I was literally just gonna
Are you
say
gonna
that.
say that? I mean, they actually love it
The
because,
older people who have lost their ankle strategy for balance, this is a good way of reteaching them ankle strategy. Rigidity through the rest of the body, letting the ankle be the thing to pick up the ground.
they get an arm workout, because it's like a push up.
So if you haven't switched legs, go ahead and switch legs. So now we're gonna do a partner assisted fall. So Jesse, I'll use you. You're facing this way. Just stand back up just a little bit.
Come in front of the camera.
I'm gonna give you 5 falls. I'm gonna catch you on on 4 of them.
Okay.
And the 5th one, I'm stepping out of the way. You're gonna recreate the same fall you just did, finish with the jaw. Okay? So you wanna stand, most people want to stand fairly close to it. It's like they don't really trust you. Skill feet together. Okay, hips forward, lean into me, fall into my arms. Push it back. 2, 3, 4. So allowing them to feel what acceleration on a fall to lead into the run should feel like. Okay. Why don't we just go through like alternating partners?
Okay, go in.
So you line it behind. I'll get you. Hips forward, hips forward.
Hips forward. Let your hips go, you're staying back a lot with your hips. Get that forward,
Yeah.
there you go. Yes, that's much better. 2 more. Ready? Lean, go.
You'll stay down. You'll stay down, bend your knees just a little bit. 3, 4.
You see, like at first, like we don't know what to do with ourselves.
You should feel like a fall, right?
Yeah.
So your body won't let you fall, but you will innately pick up that foot to allow you to save yourself. Just- Let's look at, yeah, let's look at, I was gonna say, let's look at timber, we'll look at a front lunge, then we'll do, there was one.
We need to do the one with the band, so they
Oh,
can.
we'll do the one with the band, and then we'll go through hip dips, and then we'll do the coordination and the foot perception drills. So timber, okay, so timber is basically going to be, you can do it, you'll want to be on single leg in pose. Single leg in pose. Let me get out of the way, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna fall as far as you can without moving your leg, and then you're gonna catch yourself. Get in your pose position, fall, catch yourself. Okay. Landing with that foot underneath you. Okay. So allowing yourself to feel what the hips should do. Catch. So just teaching fall per section. So most of, like, all the running stuff is really just perception. Like, all we're teaching people is what to feel. And you do that through drills. Like, what other sports do you not warm up with drills? Football, lacrosse, swimming, everything starts out with a warm up and drills. Runners just go out and run, right? It's foolish, right? You would never see a D1 runner or an Olympic runner not practice drills before they run. They just don't do it. We had front lunge. So you would have them get a bench or a stool, probably a bench because you want something fairly stable. For the front lunge,
We hear just not too much.
so basically a Bulgarian split squat with a pull.
Really hard.
Fast tempo, learning to pull fast, pull.
You can do it on the,
Let's try it on the bench here.
Something to hold on to.
What was it that you were doing?
Yeah, front lunge, so just picking up the foot.
Your
This-
front,
this
your
one?
front, your front.
Oh, the front foot,
Yeah.
and this one stays. Oh, cool.
Heels about, yeah.
Yeah. Let's see my other side. This is really tough. It's tough. Yeah, it's better. Yeah, I'll stop it.
Actually, it's not that promotion.
There you go. There you go.
Wow. That's the.
Whoa, look at you. You were like a rabbit. Yeah, that's
I feel the inclination there, like plantar flexor.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
To use your posterior chain, the whole thing.
So you can do full, like try and get your whatever, or you can do like little
Go
like.
try it, Nick.
Little small little tappies. Little babies to do that, but.
Yeah.
So all we're trying to do is teach them to just put off the fast.
You just feel like these drugs becomes obvious to what you work on, like it's obvious to me, you're working. Like it kind of.
That's your.
Pick things out.
Let's have everyone do hip dips, and then we'll go band exercise, and then we'll do the foot coordinations. So hip dips, this is a challenge to give to your runners. This is gonna teach strong core, strong hips. The idea is that everyone does 30 hip dips a day. So first is gonna be tall plank position. Drop the hips, pick them up. Let's go 10 of those. Okay, it's almost like little repeat down dogs. Hips come forward, chest stays up, drive the hips forward.
Andrew, these would be good for you to
Yeah.
get used to
Get your chest up,
the fall, like letting your hips
almost
just
like
go.
getting into a cobra. Yeah. Yep. Okay, after 10, left leg up, 5 single leg hip dips. You feel how hard that is. Switch after 5. Other side.
Need a sound,
And then same thing, reverse.
yeah. It's really
Dig
hard.
the heels in, knees are slightly bent. 10, reverse hip dips. Squeeze the glutes at the top, let the hips lead the way. Yeah, it's getting warm in here. You're gonna switch 5 single leg. You're gonna really feel the hamstring on that. So this is great for runner strength. After 5 switch sides, you get slight bend in that knee, dig that heel into the ground, feel that hammy. heart rate should be going a little bit up.
That's hard, right?
The goal is to get your serious runners 30 a day. So 10 double, 5 single, 10 double, like I said, 40 a day. All right. Foot perception drill on learning how to pull. The band, twist it, or over your shoulder.
That's the out.
And what you're gonna feel is that band's gonna pull your foot up off the ground. So get a stretch of land, jog. Right? Light jog, feel how much that band wants to put up, peel you off the ground. We have others. That's one right when we get. There you
I
go.
don't know how much, I need to grab them.
Right, so you can feel, it's just, it feels your body. Pass it off. Yeah. Okay. I was supposed to. So you can prescribe people those
Let's do
just
the, let's
basics.
do the banner on the waist of just the falling. So
Oh,
another
yeah,
way,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I'm understanding here, so another way is to. So
I'll
is to
follow.
take one of these and start like, so just work on leaning, like getting the fall, so you're lean, there you go. So for somebody that's struggling to figure out how to bring their hips forward, not come back. This helps them to feel a little bit like they're getting some support of where they should be in space.
Yeah.
So what I'll do, especially like, we have to be more hallway. But so what you would do is you're gonna start to lean, you're gonna start to run, and then I'm gonna let go of it. So just kind of jog in that space, yep. Yep, and then I let go of it and let you run. If we have a larger, like in the hall or here, like I'll get behind them, I'll be behind them as they're running a little bit more. I'm like, pick up, take a big speed, and then I let go, and it's like catapult you because you're like already, we'll try outside and you'll see the difference. But it catapults you, so you're just like, wow. But again, I'll do this with my little ladies and be like, let's just walk. Like feel that bringing your hips forward. And I have them just walk down the hall.
Let's do the foot perception drills. We'll do those outside. And then, do this efficient run. In your pose position towards the flexion through the other foot. Let's switch sides. So you're going crisscross. Alternating which foot is forward. Backward. Really turn. This week. Hip twists. With forward progression.
And what you're gonna find with each, one of them might work better for you, like get you feeling like you can run better. So you pick kind of, you know, the ones that seem to give you the biggest bang. Like this one that you're doing seems to help me the most with getting my hips forward, the twists.
Here we go, the other side.
Don't hit the pothole.
Posture, following the front back running. You feel your chest really lift up. Jesse's got some tight pecs. What? Opposite, arms forward, lean. Learning how to fall forward. TikToks. Arms per foot.
And you could put the metronome on too doing this to get it to like 180.
TikTok forward backward. Switch.
This is the new functionized dance. Your whole body's moving, Jesse.
Accelerate.
Don't hit the pothole.
That is your foot perception, fall perception, posture work. Easy things to give to people, make it their warm up. I normally tell them the first quarter of a mile, make it continuous. Start with double leg hops, get into your jog, then go single leg hops, get into your jog. Spend the first 5 or 10 minutes running through those drills. You'll be happier for it, you'll run faster, you'll run more efficiently through it.
Let's use the bands and just show them the fall with the, yeah.
Yes, see. Okay. So around the waist, kind of right at the ASIS. Lean. Wait, run in place. Now start to lean forward, run, keep going, keep going. Faster, 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 faster. Good. Try it.
So you're just giving him enough resistance so that he can lean, but not hold it back. So start to go in place. Yep. All right, now start to move. Nick, go with him. Start to move, start to move, start to move. Faster, 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 faster. Now let go of one side and let him go. There you go. Yeah, you feel it? It's kind of a cool feeling.
chest up, there you go. In place now. Move up, lean into it now. Faster, 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 go, 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 go. Let's